FPL Game Week 15 starts tomorrow morning. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at everything you need to know going into the upcoming Game Week 15 deadline. We're going to discuss, should you be captaining Mo Salah despite him being away from home in a 12:30 kickoff? Should you be selling Erling Haaland if you're one of the few people who still has him? And is Trent Alexander-Arnold better than Virgil van Dijk? We'll cover all of that. We'll have a look at my updated team going into the Game Week 15 final team selection decisions. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1,712 likes is the aim. Subscribe if we are new around here as well. We're going to dive straight in. The FPL Game Week 15 deadline is about 12 hours away, maybe slightly more depending on when you are watching this. So there is a lot to get through with a very short turnaround. Again, from a midweek Game Week 14, Game Week 13 last weekend, FPL is coming at us thick and fast. We're going to start off again by talking about Erling Haaland. Some of you will still be in the camp where you own him. The fixtures are starting to get a little bit better. Should you potentially be looking to hold him? I still don't think he's worth the money. Even with the fixtures coming up, he needs to be returning 2 goals a game. And although City did win midweek, finally they got back to winning ways. I still don't think he's worth the money that you are looking to pay for him. So yes, I would be looking to sell him and getting on board with the midfield that is Salah, Saka and Cole Palmer and some of the other cheaper forwards that are performing very well at the moment. He is still a sell for me, despite him actually being quite high up the captaincy ranking this week because of the fixture he has away at Crystal Palace. Next up is Trent Alexander-Arnold. A lot of you are looking at a potential double move of selling Brian and Bomo down to a cheaper midfielder and upgrading a defender to Trent Alexander-Arnold. That is a move I'm considering for my team, but is it worth a -4? For free, it's absolutely something I would be considering, and I think it's quite likely I make that double transfer with 2 frees in my team, but I'm not sure I'd do it for a -4. Away from home in the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park, the weather is also forecast to be horrible, which tends to lead to a little bit more goals sometimes in the Premier League. So if you can't do it for free, I would just stick with what you've got and then roll the transfer and potentially do it for free going into Game Week 16. Then finally, we're going to have a look at captaincy. I do have the sort of main ranking with Mo Salah in at number 1. He is the 12:30 kickoff, and some of you don't like it, including me. I don't really like captaining in the 12:30 kickoff in the early game, but Salah just feels so inevitable at the moment. It's difficult to look past him at the moment, so he is number 1. I do think Chelsea will likely get chances. Now, Romero might be back for Spurs, but Dragishin is likely to start. They've got Porro, Udogie and Romero. If Romero is out, it would make Palmer a really interesting captaincy option because they would likely have to play Archie Gray because Ben Davies is likely to miss that game. With the slight uncertainty on Romero's availability, we have got to put Palmer in at number 2. Erling Haaland is number 3 going away to Crystal Palace. It's not a bad fixture. Not many of you are still owning him. He is a differential, and whether you trust him for the captaincy armband is something else. But if you do still own him, he's absolutely worth a shout if you're deciding to keep him. Number 4 is probably the biggest differential in Bukayo Saka. Not many people are looking for him with captaincy over the past couple of games, just because he did blank during the midweek as well will likely put a few people off. Fulham at home, as we saw again in Game Week 14, are a very, very solid side, which does put me off a little bit putting the captaincy armband on Bukayo Saka. Their left back, Anthony Robertson, has been one of the shine-out stars for them this season and might do a job going up against Saka. However, Robinson does like to get forward, which might leave a little space in behind for Saka, but I'm not sure I trust him with the captaincy armband. Then number 5, if you do own Ollie Watkins at home to Southampton, he is predicted to start given not playing more than 70 minutes in the past couple of games. He is a decent shout at home to a Southampton team who are still without several key players. And of course, Jack Stevens did get suspended, having been sent off midweek against Chelsea. Looking at some injury news, there wasn't really much to report in terms of injury news on main players. There might be some little bits that you're looking for, so check them out yourself on Twitter or wherever you get your injury news from. But the main bits, first one is Phil Foden. Phil Foden is still ill for Manchester City, which does rule him out, and that might force Pep Guardiola to play Kevin De Bruyne again, which I thought did make them a better team, but he definitely doesn't look like he's fully fit and able to play that many minutes. So it'll be interesting to see whether they do go with a Kevin De Bruyne in that midfield. Will they go with Jack Grealish in central areas again? But Phil Foden has been ruled out. Looking at Arsenal, both Gabriel and Calafiori trained inside on Friday. They said we have to monitor a few players. We have another training session tomorrow on Saturday before their game on Sunday, of course. We basically don't know. Arteta was not likely to give us anything on this. I would predict that he starts. I always expect Arsenal players to start no matter what Arteta says, but I said that during the week and he, of course, did miss out. There's not much I can really do. He's probably not a buy this week, but if you've got him, you absolutely hold him and start him and do not sell him. Then finally, we look at Manchester City. You'll be wondering whether Gavardio and Rico Lewis are going to start. Gavardio, Lewis, Walker and Diaz are the only available confirmed defenders that they have going into the weekend. Akanji is the only other one that might be available, but he is still considered a major doubt. With this in mind, it does seem likely that unless Akanji does make a recovery, that Rico Lewis should start. He may even get a start in midfield, even if Akanji does line up. Gavardio may end up playing a slightly more central role. It could be Lewis at left back with having a Kyle Walker at right back, with Gavardio playing as one of the centre backs. That is also a possibility. But Lewis and Gavardio hopefully should both start. With that in mind, let's have a look at a few players to buy. We're going with David Raya as the #1 goalkeeper. If Alisson is back, which he is not this weekend, he might get into the ranking because Liverpool defenders are very popular and Alisson is slightly cheaper than David Raya now. Outside of them, I don't really love many keepers, so you're probably just going to be holding on to who you own at the moment if you're not going to buy David Raya. I still like Verbruggen, despite him making mistakes and conceding a few goals during the week. Is still probably the best of a bad bunch. Now, Henderson does have a few other fixtures on the horizon which get a bit better if you trust Crystal Palace to turn things around. Fabianski in at #3 away at Leicester. Forster with their fixture against Chelsea in at #4. And then if you want to spend the money on Onana, he's probably in #5, but I'm not certain he's worth the money. They do have Nottingham Forest at home this week though, which could be a decent entry point. Moving into defence, of course, there's no Gabriel in there. If we get confirmation on Friday evening that Gabriel is going to be available, he's probably up there alongside Trent and Van Dijk in terms of ones to buy. Trent is #1. I think the slight rotation risk is worth it for the attacking threat that you get with him. Virgil van Dijk is a very, very good alternative if you don't want to have the risk of Trent and you don't want to have the full money spent on him at almost 7 million, predicted to rise to 7 million tonight. Then we're going with Timber over Saliba if you're looking to add another Arsenal defender. He is just slightly cheaper. The open play attacking threat is slightly better. And yes, Saliba scored. But when there's likes of Moreno, when there's likes of Gabriel available for corners, we do expect them to be more sort of target men for Arsenal than Saliba is, who did score when those other two weren't available. Gavardio is in at #4. He missed 2 big chances against Nottingham Forest during the week. So although it wasn't the best return over the past few weeks, I've got my eye on potentially buying him, or potentially for the attacking positions he might pick up and some of the fixtures City do have on the horizon from about game week 18 onwards. In terms of the cheap ones, Kirkez and Lewis Hall are my #1 and 2. Cole being benched does knock him out of my top 6. I don't think it's going to be something we see very often, but he has shown Maresca that he doesn't mind rotating his defenders. I prefer Kirkez. Bournemouth look really good at the moment. They do go away to Ipswich and have a nice run of fixtures on the horizon. Moving to midfield, we do have that Salah, Palmer, Saka top 3. They should be the priority to get to a midfield that owns all 3 of these. Then we've gone with Jared Bowen. He was very unlucky not to get any returns during the week. Does have Wolves at home. It is a big game for them, and I do expect him to continue to get chances. Mitoma is not a bad buy. You could look at some of the others in and around that price, but I think Bowen would be the one I would buy at that price. I do like Rodgers. He is probably predicted to start, but only play about 60 minutes for Aston Villa going into the weekend at home to Southampton. But he is a nice long-term hold. He is playing #10 for a very strong Aston Villa team. And then #6 is Iwobi. He might be higher up based on returns over the past 6-7 game weeks that he's had, but it is Arsenal at home this week. And then it's a difficult fixture away at Liverpool next week. But after that, it does get really nice. And we will be looking at some Fulham assets from about game week 17-18 onwards. Moving up front, we've got João Pedro in #1. He did pick up an assist during the week. We are expecting to have Danny Welbeck back in the Brighton squad for the game at the weekend. Is he going to be available to start? We don't quite know. João Pedro is better when Danny Welbeck's not there as he plays up front, but he's still a good player to buy. I've gone with Isak just over Jackson based on the fixture that he does have this week. I still like Jackson, but he, of course, still has that 4 yellow card tightrope to be keeping an eye out on. Evan Nielsen is in at #4 as a potential route into the Bournemouth team. Semenya was really reserved in that game on Thursday evening, and Cliver only played 60 minutes, which probably makes Evan Nielsen the best Bournemouth attacker, and there's no one really else. Chris Wood has actually crept back into the top 5 just because from next week the fixtures start to get a little bit better. There's no room in here for any Wolves forwards just because I'm not that fussed by the way they're performing, and they've only got a few good fixtures left on the horizon before it all starts to really dry up and turn a little bit worse for them. So if you haven't bought a Cunha or a Strand Larsen yet, I probably wouldn't be bothering going and buying one now based on the performances that we've seen. And if you've owned them, they're probably just a hold until it's time to sell. Then having a look at some potential benching decisions. This is a new segment. I know I need to improve the graphics a little bit on this, but I was doing it very quickly going into the video and trying to get it out for you. In terms of goalkeepers, Raya is number one. Then, to be honest, the rest of them probably depends on whether you own Fabianski or not. I'd start most goalkeepers over Fabianski unless it's Forster of Spurs or whether it's Henderson of Crystal Palace. In terms of defenders, of course, if you own a Gabriel, you own a Liverpool defender, a Gavardio, they're probably all definite starts for you this week. But in terms of ones you might be considering in terms of benching rankings, we've got the Aston Villa ones in there. The Manchester United ones at home to Forest are definite starts. Porro is just above Aït-Nouri, who is above Rico Lewis in my mind. You then have Robinson, who has a difficult fixture at home to Arsenal, but so does Colwill, Greaves and Mykolenko as well. In terms of the midfielders and forwards, Cunha, if you've got him, you have to start him. And that's a very similar vein of if you've got Strand Larsen as well. João Pedro and Jackson and Evan Nilsson are all definite starts, and I'd probably start them over most of the midfielders that you've got. Morgan Rogers, I just plan on starting over Semenyo at the moment, but it's very close in my team. I haven't made up my mind completely on that. And then you've got a few other midfielders and forwards in there depending on who you own. So with that in mind, let's have a look at the projections from Rob T FPL for the Game Week 15 matches. Aston Villa are actually predicted to score the most goals at home to Southampton with 2.35. If you have an Aston Villa player who does start, they could be in with some points. You've then got Liverpool in next with 2.0. And interesting, Liverpool are predicted to score more goals than both Chelsea and Manchester City if that impacts your captaincy in returns to the likes of Saka, of course, Arsenal in there as well, Haaland, Cole Palmer and Mo Salah as well. Looking at clean sheet odds, Liverpool are the only team to hit that 40-point threshold that we do look for every week. Aston Villa hit 36, Manchester City also hit 36, Manchester United hit 36 and Arsenal hit 38. So a few defenders you could look to buy, but Liverpool look like a better buy this week than Arsenal if you are deciding between a Trent and a Timber, for example. So having a look at my teams in terms of potential transfers, I do have 2 transfers and it is just those same moves that I'm considering. Mbeumo out and probably Rico Lewis up to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, I could sell Mykolenko for Trent. However, there is a potential chance that that bit of money between the two of them is something I might need over the next couple of game weeks. So I do actually think it will be Lewis as the one I'd sell because he's the one closest to a price fall, which would also leave me a little bit of money as well. Looking at the potential price changes, Trent is definitely predicted to rise tonight. Rodgers is unlikely, but it's not impossible. And Mbeumo has the ability to potentially drop, although not predicted at time of recording, which is 2:25 on Friday afternoon at the moment. I do think the chances are I will make those transfers and I will make them this evening. That is the current prediction of Mbeumo to Rodgers and Lewis up to Trent. There is a possibility that I sell Mykolenko or even Greaves instead of selling Lewis so that I have a good first sub in case Gabriel doesn't play. That is playing in the back of my mind a little bit, that if I sell Lewis and then, for example, Gabriel doesn't play, I'm stuck with Greaves or Mykolenko as well. Captaincy at the moment is on Mo Salah with Cole Palmer getting the vice captain. That is not locked in. That is something that could go to the deadline. And then if I do buy Rodgers, it's pretty close between Rodgers and Semenyo as who to start. As per my benching ranking at the moment, I prefer Rodgers, but I will be keeping my eye out on predicted lineups on Rodgers and if he's likely to start or not going into the weekend. Of course, I haven't made those transfers, but I will probably post if we do confirm them on Friday evening or not. And that is all. It is, of course, back to a usual Saturday morning deadline stream, 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Saturday morning. Set the reminder, which is linked above. Go and find that stream. Click notify for a reminder when that stream goes live. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you've liked as well. 1,792 likes is the aim on this video. Thank you all for watching. If you need some Friday evening content, we have done an impromptu additional Know the Score podcast, which was out yesterday. Any questions you have, drop them in the comments of this video. If not, come and drop your questions in the stream on Saturday morning as well. And I'll do my best to answer as many of them as possible in hopefully a not too hectic deadline, although Liverpool are the early kickoff and we hopefully will get some team news if you are waiting on it as well. Thank you all for watching. Have a lovely Friday evening. Have a lovely weekend, but hopefully I'll see some of you on the stream. Thank you for watching and I'll be back again very soon.